The detention center smelled of recycled air and desperation. Calloway wiped his hands on a rag that had long since stopped being clean, standing in the dim corridor outside the holding cells. The station administrator had called him down for what should have been a simple repair job, a malfunctioning environmental control unit in one of the cells. He hadn't expected to find her there. Through the reinforced transparent panel, he could see a woman sitting motionless on the narrow bench. Her skin held the pale violet hue of the Sarathi people, luminescent patterns tracing delicate lines along her forearms and throat. Those patterns, he knew, shifted with emotional state. Hers barely flickered, dim, almost extinguished. "How long has she been in there?" Reed asked the guard, a broad-shouldered Sarathi male with harsh angles to his face. 6 months. Maybe 7. The guard's voice carried the weight of routine indifference. Reed moved closer to the panel. The woman's eyes remained fixed on the floor, her shoulders curved inward as if trying to make herself smaller. The environmental unit hummed irregularly, making the air too cold. He could see her breath. "What's the charge?" "Heresy, spoke against the council's doctrine." The guard shifted, clearly uncomfortable with the human's questions. "Not your concern, mechanic." Reed pulled his toolkit from his shoulder. "The unit's in the cell. I need access." The guard hesitated, then keyed the lock. The door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. The woman didn't look up as Reed entered. He moved slowly, deliberately, keeping his movements visible and non-threatening. He'd worked on Sarathi vessels long enough to know their body language, their customs. This woman was broken in a way that had nothing to do with physical injury. "I'm here to fix your environmental control," Reed said quietly. "Going to make it warmer in here." Still no response. But her luminescent patterns flickered just slightly. She'd heard him. Red knelt by the faulty unit, opening his toolkit with practiced efficiency. The job should have taken 15 minutes. He made it last 45. During that time, he listened. The woman's breathing was shallow, controlled. She shifted position once, a slight movement that suggested old injuries poorly healed. And when he adjusted the temperature settings, bringing the cell to a more comfortable level, he heard the softest exhalation of relief. "There's a protocol violation in your detention record," Reed said, not looking at her directly. He spoke to the wall panel as if checking readings. "Environmental controls shouldn't have failed. Someone tampered with it." The silence stretched. Then, barely audible, "Why would you look at my record?" Her voice carried the melodic quality of her people, but it was roughened, underused. "Because failing units don't fail randomly. They're sabotaged or neglected." Reed stood, turning slowly to face her. "And I don't like seeing people freeze." She looked at him then. Her eyes were large, multifaceted in the way of her species, but the light in them had dimmed to almost nothing. "You should leave, human. Helping me will bring you trouble." "Maybe." Reed closed his toolkit. "But I'm already here." He could see the patterns on her skin brightening slightly, confusion mixing with something else. Hope, perhaps. Or the memory of it. "My name is Althea," she said finally, "though names mean little in this place. Reed Calloway, station mechanic." He moved toward the door, then paused. "The unit will hold now, but these old systems need regular maintenance checks. Protocol says I should return in 3 days." Understanding flickered across her face. The luminescent patterns pulsed once, stronger than before. Reed left the cell with more questions than he'd arrived with. The guard locked the door behind him, but Reed had already begun cataloging inconsistencies. The detention order in the system didn't match standard Sarathi legal procedures. The environmental failure had been deliberate. And Althea's physical condition suggested treatment that violated even the loosest interpretation of interspecies detention protocols. He'd come to fix a heating unit. He was leaving with a case that didn't add up. 3 days later, Reed returned with his toolkit and a datapad hidden beneath his jacket. The same guard stood watch, looking less than pleased to see him. "The unit should be fine," the guard said. "Should be isn't the same as is. I need to verify." Reed's tone left no room for argument. "Unless you want to explain to the station administrator why you prevented mandatory maintenance." The door opened. Althea stood this time, though she swayed slightly with the effort. The luminescent patterns on her skin were brighter than before, responding to his presence. Reed noticed details he'd missed during his first visit. The way she favored her left side, the faint discoloration around her wrists that suggested restraints, the tremor in her hands. "Your heating unit is holding," Reed said, setting down his toolkit. "But I need to check the air circulation system." He worked in silence for several minutes, the guard's attention drifting as the monotony of watching someone adjust ventilation settings took its toll. When Reed judged the moment right, he spoke quietly. I accessed the Sarathi legal database. Your case record doesn't exist in the official system. Someone scrubbed it. Althea's breath caught.
You shouldn't have. You were a council researcher, specialized in ancient Sarathi texts.
Red kept his voice low, his hands busy with maintenance work that needed no maintenance.
You found something that contradicted official documents.
The silence that followed felt heavy. Outside the cell, the guard shifted position but didn't look their way. I found proof, Althea whispered. Our people's origin story, the one the council bases all authority on, it's incomplete. Deliberately altered centuries ago. Her luminescent patterns flickered with agitation. The true texts show our ancestors made choices the current council would find inconvenient. So they locked you up, buried the evidence. And now they'll bury me. She wrapped her arms around herself. The cold, it's not neglect. They're killing me slowly. Read, making it look natural. Sarathi cannot survive long-term in low temperatures. Our metabolism fails. Reed's jaw tightened. He'd suspected, but hearing it confirmed sent anger coursing through him. The evidence you found, where is it? Hidden, encrypted in a personal data store at the research facility. She moved closer, her voice urgent. But you can't help me. If the council discovers you're asking questions, I'm a mechanic. I ask questions about everything. Reed closed his toolkit, meeting her multifaceted eyes directly. And I'm stubborn. Ask anyone on this station. For the first time since he'd met her, Althea smiled. It was faint, fragile, but real. Why would a human risk himself for a Sarathi heretic? Because heresy usually just means someone told the truth too loudly. Reed stood. I'll be back in 5 days. Protocol maintenance check. Be ready to tell me everything you remember about where that evidence is. Over the following weeks, Reed became a fixture outside Althea's cell. Each visit lasted longer than the last, each conversation delving deeper into what she'd discovered. The guard grew comfortable with his presence, bored by the routine. Reed learned about the research facility's layout, the security protocols, the names of colleagues who might still be sympathetic to Althea's cause. He learned about Sarathi culture, their complex relationship with historical truth, the political factions within the council that had orchestrated her imprisonment. And Althea learned about him, about the human colony ship that had brought him to this sector, about the loss that had driven him to become a wanderer fixing things for strangers, about the stubborn streak that made him incapable of walking away from injustice. You remind me of someone, Althea said during his 7th visit. A colleague. She asked too many questions, too. They transferred her to a frontier outpost the day after I was arrested. What was her name? Veeth. Researcher, Veeth. Althea's patterns pulsed with memory. If anyone would have saved my data, hidden it somewhere retrievable, it would be her. Reed made a note on his datapad. I'll find her. Reed. Althea's voice stopped him as he prepared to leave. Why are you doing this? Truly? He turned, meeting her gaze. The answer came easier than he expected. Because everyone deserves someone who won't look away. Finding researcher Veeth took 3 weeks and favors called in from contacts across 4 stations. Reed used every repair job as an opportunity to ask questions, to piece together the network of Sarathi researchers who'd been scattered after Althea's arrest. Veeth, it turned out, had been transferred to a remote monitoring station on the edge of Sarathi space. Reed found her through a maintenance request for the station's communication array. The conversation, when he finally secured a private channel, was tense. You're asking me to commit treason, Veeth said, her luminescent patterns flashing with anxiety. I'm asking you to tell the truth. Althea is dying in a cell for trying to do the same. Reed kept his voice steady. You have her research data. I know you do. She trusted you. If I give it to you, the council will know. They monitor everything. Not everything. Not a human mechanic's personal data storage. I'm beneath their notice. Reed leaned closer to the screen. Please. She doesn't have much time. Veeth's patterns dimmed, then brightened with decision. There's a maintenance junction on the main research facility station. Subsection 47. I left a storage chip in the environmental control panel. Access code is BAY. She rattled off a series of numbers. Tell Althea I never stopped believing her. Reed committed the information to memory. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just make sure her sacrifice means something. Getting into the research facility proved easier than expected. Human mechanics moved through Sarathi spaces with a kind of invisible privilege, necessary but unremarkable. Reed filed a maintenance request for subsection 47's environmental systems, citing routine inspection protocols. The storage chip was exactly where Veith had said it would be, tucked behind a circulation panel that hadn't been opened in months. Reed palmed it, his heart hammering, and completed his inspection with hands that wanted to shake but didn't. Walking out of that facility with Althea's evidence felt like the longest journey of his life. Back in his quarters, Reed decrypted the chip. What he found made his blood run cold. Althea had discovered that the Sarathi Council's foundational doctrine, the divine mandate that granted them absolute authority, was based on deliberately mistranslated texts. The original manuscripts showed that Sarathi ancestors had established a democratic system, one where religious leaders served as advisors, not rulers. The current council had built their power on a lie, and they'd imprisoned Althea to keep that lie intact. Reed copied the data 3 times, distributing it across separate secure locations. Then he began planning. "You can't just release this publicly," Althea said during his next visit. She'd grown stronger over the weeks, her patterns brighter, responding to hope. "The council will claim it's fabricated. They'll use it to justify even harsher measures." "I know." Reed had spent sleepless nights working through scenarios. "We need someone with authority, someone whose voice the Sarathi people will trust. There's no one like that. Anyone with that kind of influence is either council-aligned or too afraid to speak." Reed leaned against the cell wall, thinking, what about external pressure? The Interstellar Commerce Commission has oversight on stations like this. They investigate treaty violations. The ICC is human-led. The council will say it's species bias. Not if we give them evidence that can't be dismissed. Reed pulled out his datapad. "I've been documenting your detention conditions. Environmental neglect, missing legal records, detention without proper charge filing. That's a treaty violation right there. The ICC has to investigate." Althea's eyes widened. "If they investigate my detention, they'll need to review the charges. And when they find there aren't any legitimate charges, they'll dig deeper." Reed felt the pieces clicking into place. "They'll want to know why the council imprisoned a respected researcher. That's when we introduce your evidence. It's risky. The council could simply eliminate the evidence, eliminate me, before the investigation concludes." "Not if you're in ICC protective custody." Reed met her gaze. "I'm filing the complaint tomorrow, detailing every protocol violation, every suspicious circumstance. Once the ICC opens an investigation, they'll demand access to all political prisoners. You'll be transferred." For the first time since he'd met her, Althea's luminescent patterns blazed with full intensity. "You've thought of everything." "I've tried." Reed allowed himself a small smile. "Though I'm making this up as I go." Reed Calloway. Althea moved closer to the transparent panel separating them. "When this is over, when I'm free, I owe you everything. You owe me nothing. But maybe you can teach me more about proper Sarathi tea ceremony. The stuff I've been drinking tastes like recycled coolant." Her laugh was the most beautiful sound he'd heard in months. Filing the complaint triggered a cascade of events that moved faster than Reed had anticipated. The ICC took treaty violations seriously, especially those involving potential wrongful detention. Within 48 hours, an investigation team was en route to the station. The Sarathi Council, predictably, fought back. Reed received his first official warning 3 hours after filing. A council representative appeared at his workspace, patterns rigid with barely controlled anger. "You are interfering in internal Sarathi matters, human. I'm reporting treaty violations. That's my right as a station resident." Reed didn't look up from the power coupling he was recalibrating. "The prisoner's detention is lawful. Then you have nothing to worry about from an investigation." Reed set down his tools, finally meeting the representative's gaze. "Unless it isn't lawful." The Sarathi's patterns flared with rage, but he could do nothing. The complaint was filed. The investigation was coming. Reed received his second warning that evening, less official and more direct. Someone tampered with the environmental controls in his quarters, flooding them with toxic vapor. He survived only because he'd been working late, returning to find his rooms uninhabitable. Message received. He moved his sleeping area to the maintenance workshop. The ICC investigation team arrived on a Tuesday. 3 representatives, 2 human and 1 Keltheron, with authority that superseded station governance. Reed met them at the docking bay, datapad loaded with evidence. Reed Calloway? The lead investigator, a woman with iron-gray hair and sharp eyes, extended her hand. "I'm Commissioner Valdez. Your complaint was detailed. I'm thorough." Reed returned the handshake. "The evidence will speak for itself." "Let's hope so." The Sarathi Council is claiming this is a political attack disguised as humanitarian concern. Then they won't mind you reviewing the detention records and examining the prisoner's condition. Valdez smiled grimly. No, they won't. The investigation took 3 days. Reed watched from a distance as the ICC team examined records, interviewed guards, and finally gained access to Althea's cell. When they emerged, Valdez's expression was thunderous. The environmental conditions alone constitute torture, she said to Reed privately. No legal documentation of charges, no trial proceedings, no access to representation. This isn't detention. It's disappearance with a bureaucratic veneer. Can you get her out? We're transferring her to ICC custody immediately. The council is screaming about sovereignty, but they signed the treaties. They don't get to violate them. Valdez studied Reed carefully. You risked a lot to bring this forward. The council won't forgive easily. I know. Reed had already begun making plans to transfer to another station, but she couldn't wait any longer. There's more to this, isn't there? Some reason the council was so desperate to silence her? Reed considered the encrypted chip in his quarters, the evidence that could reshape Sarathi society. Ask her, he said finally. When she's safe, when she's ready, ask her what she discovered. You'll understand why they were willing to kill her. Althea's transfer happened under guard, the ICC team taking no chances. Reed watched from the observation deck as they escorted her to the docked ICC vessel. She looked fragile in the harsh corridor lighting, but her luminescent patterns blazed with life. She saw him through the viewport. Their eyes met across the distance. She raised one hand, pressing it against the glass in a gesture of gratitude that transcended species. Reed returned it. The vessel departed an hour later. Althea was safe. The investigation was ongoing. And Reed had one more move to make. He sent the encrypted research data to Commissioner Valdez with a single note. This is what they tried to bury. The aftermath took months to unfold. The ICC investigation expanded as Valdez reviewed Althea's evidence, consulting with independent Sarathi scholars who confirmed its authenticity. What began as a wrongful detention case became a cultural reckoning. The council tried to suppress the findings. They failed. Too many copies existed, distributed too widely. Sarathi citizens across dozens of systems began demanding answers, demanding reform. Reed watched it unfold from a new posting 3 stations away. He'd left quietly as planned, but kept tabs on the news feeds. 6 months after her release, Althea gave testimony before the Interstellar Council. Reed watched the broadcast in his workshop, seeing her speak with a strength that had been impossible in that frozen cell. Her luminescent patterns blazed with conviction as she presented her research, as she described what the council had done to silence her. The vote to restructure Sarathi governance wasn't immediate, but it was inevitable. A year after filing that first complaint, Rand received a message, simple text, routed through secure channels. I'm teaching again, at a new institution, one dedicated to historical truth. We're establishing a scholarship for interspecies cooperation. I told them about a human mechanic who understood what justice required. Would you consider joining our advisory board? Althea. Reed read it 3 times, then typed his response. Only if you promise to teach me that tea ceremony properly. Her reply came within minutes. I promise. And Reed, thank you for not looking away. He smiled, saving the message. Outside his workshop, the station hummed with the endless rhythm of maintenance needs and human traffic. Somewhere in Sarathi space, a woman he'd freed from darkness was rebuilding her life, her culture, her people's understanding of their own history. Reed picked up his toolkit. There was a malfunctioning environmental control unit on level 7 that needed attention. And after that, maybe he'd look into what was required to join an academic advisory board. Some things, it turned out, were worth investigating. If you have enjoyed the story, tell YouTube to send you more stories like this by subscribing to this channel, liking the video, and leaving a comment.